Hello, everybody. My name is Mr. Lee, and welcome back to As Quick as Possible, a series where we discuss math and science topics as quick as possible so that you can get done with your homework as quick as possible. Today, we're going to be talking about inverse functions. This is part two to a series discussing trigonometry. So if you are not familiar with basic trigonometry, please check the link in the description to part one of this series so that you can get caught up. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at inverse functions, and this comes with a problem. The problem reads, a person standing 7 meters away from a 10-meter tall building is looking up to the roof of the building. At what angle is the person looking up? All right, so in the previous video, we were able to determine the height of the building by using the distance stood away from the building and the angle that the person is looking up at the roof of the building. But today we are instead looking for the variable which is right here, x. We're going to claim it as x. That's the angle that the person is looking up to the roof of the building. But with the way that the functions work that I taught you in the last video, how are we possibly going to be able to solve for this problem? So here we have the triangle that I converted from the building with the units that were given and the variable right here at the angle that we got to solve for. So what we learned last episode is that sine equals opposite over hypotenuse, cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent equals opposite over adjacent. If we look over to the triangle on the left side of the screen, we see that we have the opposite and we have the adjacent, which is tangent. But if we do not have this angle right here, then we put an x here where the angle is supposed to be. And then since it equals opposite over adjacent, then we would put 10 over 7. But what are we going to do in order to get the answer to this variable right here? Well, that's where inverse functions come in. Going back to what we learned in the previous episode, we learned that tangent variable equals opposite over adjacent. However, an inverse function states that tangent to the negative 1 power, in parentheses, opposite over adjacent, is going to equal our hidden variable. Once we've got it written out like this, we can then plug in our numbers for the opposite and adjacent and solve for our problem. So we put tangent to the negative 1 power, 10 over 7 equals x. Now, you might not initially find a tangent to the negative 1 power on your calculator. Usually, and this goes for Casios and TI-84s that are most common in high school classrooms, you need to push the shift or the second button and push where tangent is on the face buttons. If you look, you should see a little tangent to the negative 1 power on top of the tangent face button. Therefore, that means that x equals 55.008 degrees, or we can just simplify it to be 55 degrees. So since we are given the height of the building and we are given the distance that the person is standing away from the building, we can then solve for 55 degrees. That means that the person is looking up to the roof of the building at a 55-degree angle based on the given constants of the height of the building and the distance. So that's pretty much how inverse functions work. It works the same for sine and cosine. So if you need to solve for sine and cosine, you can basically do sine to the negative 1 power and cosine to the negative 1 power as well, based on the given, if you're, say, given the hypotenuse and you're given the adjacent, then that means that you would use inverse cosine or arc cosine, as they call it. And that's pretty much it at a very basic level. I hope you guys learned something.